Hello and welcome back to the Inspiring Workplaces, a series of events. It's the first one after summer. I'm Matthew Manners, CEO and founder of Inspiring Workplaces Group, if you don't know. And just a few bits of a few updates from us because we've been away since the summer series at the end of July. We've just announced our annual Inspiring Work Tech Award winners today. Some of the best work tech vendors that we think are out there, and they're all on the website. And if you wanted some help to speed your change along, then we would recommend you go look at them. So that's gone live today. Our Inspiring Leaders program has a deadline in a month's time. So that's the individual focused awards program that runs alongside the organizational one. Our Inspiring Workplaces Awards are open for 2026 with a deadline of February 25. And if you're looking for a survey-based recognition, we did launch Certified People First in June, which is the first time in a decade of operating that we have done that. We've been asked a few times over the years, to put it mildly, do we do a survey? Our original awards are storytelling based, and we finally decided 2 years ago to start to work on the survey based one too, and that now exists, called Certified People First. We have 15 new podcast episodes, an actual brand new podcast coming, 6 ebooks, lots of free articles. And as I said, this is our first free event coming out of the summer. We have 7 more before Christmas and almost 100 speakers, all free, all part of our free community, and all this content designed to help you, help your people. It's why we get out of bed in the morning. We love it, and we hope you do too. As time is short, because it's an hour, and I've probably taken up too much of it already, to our first power hour coming out of the summer on belonging and inclusion. These sessions that we started about 18 months ago and will continue into 2026, bringing together storytellers from different backgrounds and viewpoints to share their take on what it really means to belong on that subject, and today it being belonging. Why? Because there's no greater driver of a high-performing culture than believing in it and knowing that you're part of it. Well, that's what we think anyway. Right now, to state the obvious, it can feel like there's a battle raging against the very idea of helping people feel safe and themselves at work and beyond. We obviously think that's a nonsense and in some ways evil. Belonging isn't a nice to have, it's a business imperative. These power hours are here to arm you with stories, data points, and maybe even a spark of debate to help you take that message back into your workplace. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first storyteller. And when I'm done, please, Amy, if we can bring her on. Let's welcome Priya Bates, President of Inner Strength Communications, Inc. In Aligned, Not Alike, Why Belonging Doesn't Require Agreement, Priya Bates challenges the idea of that agreement equals alignment. She shows how belonging is built on clarity, connection, and psychological safety, not uniformity. An award-winning strategist, IABC fellow, and co-founder of A Leader Like Me, Priya has helped global organizations align people, purpose, and performance. And she's an incredible human being, and we're delighted to welcome her back. I think it's been about 5 years since Priya's graced the stage at Inspiring Workplaces. So, hello, Priya.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Glad to be here from Toronto.
Nice.
So it's morning for me and afternoon for, I think, most others.
Yeah, and I think the days are shortening everywhere now anyway. So, I mean, there's not much difference between morning and evening anyway. So it's lovely to have you back. I'm going to leave because people are here to listen to you, not me.
Great. And I think we've got my presentation that's coming up. That's awesome. So hello, everyone. We often think about belonging, that belonging requires agreement, and that to belong, we must all think the same way, act the same way, and even look the same way. But here's the truth. Belonging doesn't require us to be alike. It requires us to be aligned. I learned this really early in my career. I worked with leaders and teams where there was plenty of disagreement on strategy, on execution, even what success looked like. But those same teams thrived because we were aligned around purpose. and we were aligned around why we were here and who we were serving, and that alignment created space for diverse voices and different paths to the same destination. Too often, organizations confuse agreement with belonging. We think that if everyone agrees, everyone belongs. But forced agreement leads to groupthink, silence, and disengagement, and people sharing their best ideas because they don't want to stand out. And they stop speaking truth to power because they don't want to be seen as difficult. And here's the paradox: the moment you stop encouraging difference, you lose innovation, you lose trust, and you lose belonging. Belonging isn't about fitting in, it's about being valued, and it's about knowing your perspective matters, even when it's not the same as everyone else's. Alignment is different. Alignment is about shared direction, not identical opinions. It's the glue that holds organizations and communities together when differences surface. Alignment is different. Alignment is about sameness. Alignment is about shared purpose. Agreement is about sameness and alignment is about shared purpose. So agreement says we must all think the same way, where alignment says we're going in the same direction, even if we take different routes. This is what helps people belong without being silenced. In fact, alignment is what creates space for different voices, experiences, and perspectives to thrive, because we don't need to agree on everything to be working towards something bigger together. So, I was having this great conversation with Zora Artis and Wayne Aspen from Australia the other day about research they're doing on alignment. And I'm really excited about what they find out. And it got me thinking about what's needed from an employee perspective. And one, first, it's awareness. Alignment starts with clarity. People can't align with what they don't understand. They need to know the strategy, the values, the mission, the vision, the goals. Otherwise, they're just guessing. And without awareness, people end up working in silos, pulling in different directions, wasting time and energy. Take customer service, for example. If employees don't know what the service standard is, how do we expect them to deliver consistently? So, awareness ensures everyone knows what we're working towards, the bigger picture. Agency. But awareness isn't enough. Awareness without action is useless, and that's where agency comes in. Agency gives people permission and power to contribute authentically. It's about trust. When employees have agency, they don't just follow orders, they make decisions, challenge ideas, and bring their best thinking to the table. And a great example is on the factory floor. When a frontline worker is empowered to stop a production line for safety, that's agency in action. They're not waiting for permission, they're trusted to protect what matters most. So, agency ensures people can bring themselves fully to the purpose, not just follow orders. Let's be clear too, agency without accountability leads to chaos. So, accountability is what keeps alignment strong. It means taking responsibility for outcomes, not just tasks. It means leaders and employees alike aligning their words and their actions and being held to the same standards. If safety is a value, then leaders must wear protective gear on the floor too. Otherwise, it's just a slogan on the wall. So, accountability ensures alignment sticks through behaviors, not just posters. And finally, true alignment asks people to fake agreement. It's not about nodding along when you actually disagree. Authenticity makes sure that you can bring your unique perspectives, even when it's different, and still belong. So imagine team members who challenge your process because they see a better way instead of being shut down. They're valued for it. That's alignment in work. Difference is welcome, purpose shared. So authenticity ensures belonging because people don't have to be alike, be aligned. So here's, how do we create alignment? And for those of you who know me, I love alliteration and I love a good acronym. So these are memorable. So here's one to help us in our roles in driving the alignment conversation. A, anchor in purpose. Ground the conversation in why before jumping to the what. And there are questions you can ask. What's the bigger picture we're working towards? Why does this matter to us, our team, and our customers? What will success look like if we get this right? We have to listen deeply, invite input, and show people they've been heard, even if you don't agree. What's your perspective on this? What feels most important to you about this issue? What are we not considering yet? What concerns do you have that we haven't addressed? We have to identify differences. Don't smooth over conflict. Name it so it doesn't turn toxic. Where do we see things differently? What assumptions might we be holding that aren't the same? Can you help me understand why you see it that way? There's a lot of questions. Ground in common goals. Shift from positions to shared interests. The why we agree on. So what outcome do we all care about? Even though we disagree on the method, what do we want to achieve together? What would a win look like for the people we serve? And what are the values that guide us there? And where are the overlaps in our perspective? And then finally, next steps defined. Close the loop so people can see alignment in action. What can we commit to doing next? What small experiment can we try to test our approaches? And how do we hold ourselves accountable to results? And then when will we check back in to see if this is working or not working? It's really about, and how will we share progress so everyone feels included? We've got this proof. So I want to end my portion, with that our power as internal communication professionals, because that's what I dedicate myself to doing, is really about culture building and conversation, not the campaign. So I've always said this: our power is connecting the dots from words to actions, values to behaviors, strategy to results, and brand promises to employee and customer experiences. Our goal is that we're heading in the same direction, contributing to the whole while providing our unique perspectives. So that's it for me, for my dedicated portion, and I look forward to hearing from the rest of the panelists today.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's super succinct and exactly what we're after in the Power Hour. I do love an acronym too. I spent most of COVID trying to come up with different acronyms around the word inspire. But as I said, we're going to go through the storytellers. But I just wanted to say that I was nodding along a lot throughout that, and it was you obviously clearly a communicator and a brilliant one at that. And I think it's amazing to say why belonging does not require agreement. What one of the most important messages right now, I think. And one thing we always hear about and champion is the diversity of thinking, and such how important that is and how valuable that is to an organization, that you have that diversity of thought. And it can only really happen with alignment, that people won't agree with everything. So that actually, by not agreeing with everything and allowing to be able to give permission to that, you then get the differing opinions. And I just thought that was a fantastic way of putting it. Don't need to agree on everything to be working on something bigger together. Just so much in there, Priya. So thank you so much. We'll be back at the end and bring all the storytellers together. But thank you so much. What a great start, and can't wait to go to our next storyteller. I've committed the cardinal sin of not confirming the exact pronunciation of a name that I always do, just because our first one back. So I'm going to pronounce the name, and if I'm wrong, please haul me over the coals when you arrive, Raj Kumari. So please welcome Raj Kumari Nyoji, CEO of I Belong. In Conflict as Catalyst, workplace neuroscience expert Raj Kumari reveals how tension can be transformed into growth. By harnessing empathy, resilience, and emotional regulation, leaders can turn conflict into stronger teams and healthier cultures. As CEO of I Belong and a sought-after epigenetic coach, Raj Kumari has advised leaders at Google, Salesforce, Adobe, and more, some of the biggest organizations in the world. And we're thrilled and very grateful to have Raj Kumari share their pioneering insights with us right now. So apologies for not clarifying at the beginning. I hope I wasn't awful, but welcome and thank you.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, Matt. Priya, awesome job. Two books that immediately came to mind while listening to you was Patrick Lencioni's The Advantage. I'm sure, of course, you are familiar with that, around clarity, clarity, clarity. And then all those great questions that you shared with us at the end reminded me of Edgar Schein's Humble Inquiry. So thank you for that. And so talking about conflict, I would love to dive into, like, let's talk about some conflict and let's really explore how we can navigate conflict as an opportunity. So with that, let's go ahead and dive on in. If you haven't taken a breath today, my invitation for you is to find yourself a little bit here now and just breathe into the moment. So I'm going to go through my presentation and ask you some questions. For you, as these questions pop up, think of a word that really resonates in your heart, in your soul, in your spirit, that makes a company great. What is that for you? And ultimately, whatever word, respect, trust, that you come up with, belonging, it's the teams, right? How we work together, how we collaborate. And so the question then is, well, okay, what makes a team great? And then, for you, again, take a moment and think about what pops in your mind when that question comes up for you. And whatever you share, whatever you think, we can distill that down to the relational aspects of how we engage with each other, right? That dynamic is so essential. And so relationships are everything. I was just at dinner with Paul Zak. What? Last night. Amazing. I've been following his work for 10 years. Paul Zak wrote an article called The Neuroscience of Trust, and it's really, really awesome. This is Daniel Siegel. He talks so much about the neurobiology of who we are as humans, especially in the workplace. And I love this definition of a relationship. It is to know and to be known. Right now, according to Gallup, we are at the worst levels of engagement. In fact, I think we've receded, according to the most recent article, in the last 4 years. And I think it was McKinsey that was talking about how the number one driver right now across the globe for organizations, belonging. This is David Bohm, a quantum physicist. I love this quote: real dialogue is where two or more people are becoming willing to suspend their certainty in each other's presence. That gives me a sense of relief. But we are all human and we have to collaborate and work together and figure out projects and make deadlines. So inevitably, conflict does arise. In fact, I just had a rupture last week with a direct report. So how you navigate conflict directly impacts the business and the health of the organization. Patrick Lencioni's books, The Advantage, dives really deeply into organizational health. We are designed as humans to have neural circuits running our day-to-day functions. And there are a specific set of networks that are responsible for our awareness and our ability to control ourselves. But they are really susceptible to stress, the mildest of stresses even. And so when we start to experience stress, which is abundant in the workplace, they inevitably shut down. And we move into this place of impulsivity and get a little rigid, maybe even dogmatic. And what I tell senior leadership teams all the time is, look, it is so hard to make high quality decisions during high stress times. In fact, our ability to do so often goes offline, and solving really complex issues and problems comes really challenging. So what happens? Well, our nervous system is brilliant, and so it takes over for us, but not always in the best ways. Our nervous system is always trying to regain control. And if we don't have the capacities, the inner resources, oftentimes we'll default to what I'm sure you already know, the fight, flight, freeze response, and also the fawn response. What we understand about each of these different states is that our behaviors are impacted. In a fight stance, we're very demanding. We could be micromanaging or bullying. In a flight stance, we might start to overwork. We might find ourselves in the wee hours of the morning trying to accomplish something, maybe even taking on way too much. In a freeze state, we might not want to do knowledge transfer. We might want to gatekeep. We might even stonewall. We might even stop going to meetings and decline them. Fawning, however, is interestingly the most common default state at the workplace. And you guessed it, it's whatever you want. Absolutely, I'll do it, no problem. And that's exhausting. That's why burnout and overwhelm are at the rates that they are. Fawning also is about conflict avoidance. And Priya said just a moment ago, don't avoid conflict, actually dive in toward it. It's really essential to create that foundation of belonging. So in these fight, flight, freeze, and fawn states, what is the nervous system trying to do? Find relief. So rather than get upset at the way that you're showing up during conflict in one of those states, really take a moment and understand, oh, okay, so it's my nervous system trying to actually get me to breathe, because it is. These are all attempts to control the situation, but really your nervous system and your internal landscape. But here's the thing. They prevent collaboration, and most importantly, they inhibit communication. And so the question that I'm asking all of us at the moment here is, what if we began to really see conflict as an opportunity? An opportunity to strengthen connections with those around us, especially those we don't want to be around. And the answer is absolutely. It takes some effort, but we can do it. If we really want to interrupt that fight, flight, freeze, and fawn state, what we need is fostering. We need to figure out how to foster connection. And doing so allows us to really understand where conflict is coming from. Some data here, unresolved conflict, wow. It is super intense. This is from McKinsey a while ago now, but I still love it because globally, 73% of people want to actually leave their jobs in the next 3 to 6 months because toxic workplace behavior is so rampant. And it is excessively costly. This is the global cost. I'm in the Bay Area, in San Francisco, in California. And in the United States, we take a third of that cost. Gallup came out with new numbers just this year. We are at almost $9 trillion in disengaged workforces globally. I don't even have words for that one. And so, of course, the cost of this disengagement, whatever the cost is high, and it impacts everything. There is also more data that shows that belonging right now globally is the number one driver for engagement. And, I talk about belonging all day long. It's what I do. So how do we actually get from conflict to catalyst? What's that through line? Well, we need to ask the question that we didn't ask, which is what actually makes a relationship great, right? So you have your own definition of that. You've had your own past experiences. Excuse me. What actually makes a relationship great is this, your right hemisphere. So much of what we do at I Belong is shift the neurochemistry of the internal landscape of the workforce, and bringing your right hemisphere, the right part of your relationality, is essential. And so let's talk a little bit about what that even means. The reason why we actually struggle in conflict is because we haven't fully given permission to bring that right hemisphere to work. We are very heavily indexed, I would say overly indexed, on left hemisphere, get stuff done mode. And so what we need is to really establish a foundation of belonging where we can activate our right hemisphere throughout our workforce, across the business, because each hemisphere actually has a completely different perspective. if you think about it, the left hemisphere speaks differently, it sees differently. It's really the human doing aspects of who we are. The right hemisphere, that's where we get to be human. That's where we get to be in relationship. That's where we get to be relational with ourselves, with others, and the world around us. And so that language that comes from the left hemisphere is very transactional. And oftentimes, when there's conflict, it actually blocks connection because we're so focused on the data and what went wrong and what you did. And we don't have that openness that Paul Zach was talking about last night, which was when we have that openness, when we have that vulnerability, when we share accountably first, that's the bridge to trust. And so that all happens in the right hemisphere. And when we experience interactions or difficult moments or even tension with others, and we're coming from that left hemisphere, we kind of default to blame instead of getting curious. We actually gaslight instead of validating and listening. We end up excluding instead of slowing down and empathizing. We really do avoid difficult conversations instead of sitting there and really owning that discomfort and giving feedback. We tend to be a bit demanding instead of coaching or guiding or having that humble inquiry that Priya talked about with those questions. We micromanage, and I am certainly guilty of that instead of leading, especially in moments of stress. We deflect instead of reflect. And I want to emphasize that the left hemisphere brings us a lot of strengths. It's about structure. It's where we do strategy. It's where that clarity comes from that Priya was talking about. It's about engagement and where we can get motivated, where we can implement details and get really tactical and into the weeds, and where we can bring some optimism. Our right hemisphere is that emotional maturity, that emotional intelligence. We can coordinate people because it requires us to be in relationship. Appreciation is so key here. If you haven't read Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation at the Workplace, some really interesting data in that book. We collaborate from the right hemisphere and we're able to receive feedback. How many times have you been with someone who didn't want to hear or take or own the feedback that you gave? When we have issues with the left hemisphere and deficiency in the left hemisphere for whatever reason, we're not able to receive the feedback. We have imposter syndrome. When we have left hemisphere deficiencies, it's hard to coach others. It's hard to really see what their strengths are or where they're in pain. And it's really hard to make decisions and celebrate our wins. We're focused on what went wrong, and we certainly are challenged in delegating. When we have issues in the right hemisphere, big visions are incredibly challenging. It's not something that strategy is not something that we do well or easily. We get lost in the weeds and we maybe feel a little revengeful when we feel disrespected or hurt or wounded in some capacity. This is where depression can occur and pessimism. When we have our right hemisphere more fully online, we can really beautifully impact mental well-being. We can address depression, anxiety, burnout, and we can work with and manage conflict and aggression. So flourishing in workplaces really do require our right hemisphere to be much more fully present. We are really invited to use our gut instinct and our intuitive sense making when we have access to our right hemisphere. And when we masterfully vacillate between both hemispheres, because we need both, that's actually how we move from conflict into connection. I'll just leave you with some quick data here. This is from Ernest Young, and I love this because it talks about how globally belonging is the driver, but empathy is the leadership style that workforces are hungry for. And of course, I'm going to tell you where empathy happens. It's in the right hemisphere. And so we need to be able to have leaders who really prioritize empathic leadership. And so what I talk about in all the work that I do is, as a leader, how are you holding bihemispheric leadership? Who do you need to become in today's world to lead through all that is currently present? And what might you be avoiding that needs attention? Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure what part of my brain is trying to compute all that right now, but that was just so eye-opening, and there's a lot that I'd like to get to at the end when we all come back together again. Just how, when we're using both hemispheres, we move from conflict to connection is a lovely, lovely part of that. I breathed, and thank you, because I realized I was speaking very fast at the beginning. So I've been breathing throughout. And Paul Zach, I'm glad you had dinner with him. I've yet to have dinner with him, but he's spoken for us a number of times now, and we love Paul too. So
What a great guy, right?
It's a small world, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and an iconic article, in the HBR that he wrote. So, but no, thank you so much. So much to digest there, and we'll come back once we've finished all our storytellers. So thank you.
Pleasure.
Wow, what a start to the post-summer event run. Let's go straight on to Alia Lalani, culture consultant on the intersectional advantage, a blueprint to belonging. Alia shows how moving beyond one-dimensional inclusion unlocks real belonging. By applying an intersectional lens, leaders can create psychological safety and unleash innovation across diverse teams. And Inspiring Workplaces, a winner, judge, and repeat speaker for us, Alia has supported organisations like News UK, News Corp down in Australia, in building cultures where people thrive. And we're so excited to welcome her back. Welcome Alia back. So please welcome home. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. Been loving seeing all the updates on what you're doing with business and just different parts of your profession now. So, but we'll talk about that offline probably. So,
Absolutely, with some wine in hand. I didn't realise.
It's funny you say that. I've had a stint off 12 months now, no drinking. So
amazing.
Yeah,
well done.
But just seeing what you're doing is making me interested in having your tipple now and again. So, but anyway, I digress. It's great to have you here and to talk around the issues you're going to talk around. And then once you finish, we'll bring back Priya and Raj Kumari, and we'll have a chat. So over to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me here again. Really grateful to be here and talk about belonging. Belonging. We have heard this word. I probably can't even count how many times we've said it today, but what does belonging even mean? The dictionary says it's an affinity for a place or a situation, but the truth is, as with many things, belonging can mean something very different to me than it can mean to any of you watching and listening today. Priya showed us that it doesn't require uniformity, and that alignment comes from that shared purpose or the shared values and not sameness. Absolutely. Thank you so much, and can't wait to have more conversations with you and Raj Kumari shortly. And Raj Kumari talked about the understanding the neuroscience behind empathy and being an empathetic leader and how we navigate conflict, or empathy being the leadership style. And yes, these two are absolutely core aspects to belonging. But there's one thing that I would like to add to that. The layer that we often miss is complexity. And here's the challenge. For a very long time, belonging at work has been framed in one dimension. So it's seen as a simple matter of fitting in. We often ask, is this person going to fit into our culture? Today, yes, more and more people are talking about culture add rather than culture fit. So what can we learn from a new person, and how can we evolve our business when we have someone come in? But let's be honest, we still quietly think about whether someone will fit in to the culture or the organization that we've built. And that can sometimes translate to be your whole self, but maybe be yourself that's a slightly bit more agreeable version of that, because as the other two have shown, we don't like conflict and we tend to avoid conflict. And I'm sure that we've all heard this phrase, bring your whole self to work. It shows up in our engagement surveys. It shows up in leadership messages, in job adverts, on LinkedIn. But in practice, it can often get reduced to characteristics by being a woman, by being Indian, by being queer, by being a parent. But as we all know, workplaces are far more complex than that. People don't exist in neat little boxes. Yet when organizations sometimes focus on belonging, that's often how it's treated, one box at a time, belonging for one of these characteristics. And that's where the risk often lies, is reducing people to labels instead of recognizing them in their full lived reality. And this is where intersectionality comes in. And as Matt and Amy know, it's one that I talk about often with inspiring workplaces. But intersectionality is a term that was coined in the late 1980s by legal scholar Kimberlé Crenshaw. She noticed that the law treated people's identities, such as race and gender, as separate things, but in reality, they overlap. And it's in that overlap that people experience both belonging and exclusion. So she uses a traffic analogy. Imagine you have cars coming from all different directions into one intersection. A collision can happen from any side, or it can happen from multiple sides at once. And the cars are our identities. The intersection is our lived experience. You cannot separate the collisions. And that's really what intersectionality is. It's recognizing that belonging is not about one single characteristic, but about how all of them intersect to shape someone's reality. So for me, I am not just a woman. I am not just in my mid-30s. I am not just British Indian. I am not just from an East African culture or a Muslim family. I'm not just bisexual or in a same-sex relationship. I'm not just someone currently about to embark on fertility treatment. I am all of these things, but I'm also not just all of these things. And I cannot separate myself into neat segments. And sometimes these parts of me collide, right? And for everybody, that will be something slightly different. And that can change on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. So 2 years ago, for me, it was my East African Indian family learning to accept my female partner, two parts of my identity that were intersecting in a way that caused these unique challenges for me. And now as I'm planning our wedding, it's balancing cultural expectations of that whilst also looking after my mental health in line with my own personal values is the current intersection. But these collisions aren't theoretical. They shape how I show up every day at work, at home, and beyond that. And it's why a one-dimensional approach to belonging does not work anymore. And we need a multi-dimensional map. And this is where we can flip it. So by taking intersectionality and turning it into an intersectional advantage. So how do we do that? I call it the intersectional advantage because it's where three elements overlap. To build true belonging, leaders, in my opinion, need to master this. And one thing that has been mentioned already by my previous speakers, but is the empathetic leadership, not just feeling for people, but really listening to understand or try to understand what they are going through and building that psychological safety and doing that in or with an intersectional lens. So understanding the complexities of a person's identity and making space for it, because here is the hard truth. We are all individual people and each one of us has a very different and unique journey. And true belonging starts with empathy, and the kind of empathy that says, I see you, not just in one of your boxes, but in the full complexity of your lived experience. The second is values-based leadership. So, we see values as a compass for organizations in how we get things done, how we achieve our mission, how we get to our vision. But we need to use values as not slogans on the wall, but really as that compass for our decisions. And as Priya said, for our behaviors. Particularly when you're working in an organization, that shared purpose that you're working towards, and especially when things get really difficult or messy. I've heard it from both of you already, but with diversity brings difference. With difference comes disagreement. That happens. But if we know what our values are and how we live them, we can know how to navigate those differences and to do it with empathy. And we know how to create that sense of belonging, especially in those tough moments. And that's what helps us feel like we can be at that company for a longer time and really navigate the complexities that we might have. And then the third element is weaving diversity, equity, and inclusion into culture. So when leaders can master empathy and lead with their values, diversity, equity, and inclusion becomes or stops becoming a program that solely sits in HR. It stops being that tick box exercise and becomes woven into the very DNA of that company or organization. And it is in everything from hiring to retention to leadership to decision making. And we only get true belonging when diversity, equity, and inclusion isn't just something that we do, but it really is something that shapes how we show up every single day. And when we bring those three elements together, the empathetic leadership with intersectionality at heart, leading with our values and embedding the DE&I into the culture, that overlap is what I like to call the intersectional advantage. So we've just talked about this in theory, right? What does it look like in practice, and how do we take all of these elements and apply them to a real challenge? And that's where I like to say the power of an intersectional coach comes in. Imagine your company is using its data effectively. You're really looking at your employee surveys, you're gathering qualitative analysis, looking at your leaver patterns, and you start to see that actually there is a pattern, and your LGBTQ plus women or LGBTQ plus Asian women in their mid-30s are scoring lower on their engagement scores despite their strong performance. So the issue here isn't capability, but it's the unique experience of navigating multiple and intersecting identities in the workplace. Maybe they're facing societal pressures. Maybe they've realized that the company has generous parental policies, but the fertility support is limited. Whatever it might be, the complexities are affecting how they show up, feel, and engage. So enter an intersectional coach. An intersectional coach acts as a strategic partner. They can bring informed empathy by understanding the employee experience through the lens of those intersecting identities. They can help leadership see where values and lived experience may not align. So if the company has a value like community, the coach can help the leaders explore whether that value is truly being experienced by everyone. Are employees navigating overlapping pressures, being seen, supported, and included? And where gaps exist, the coach can guide leadership to adapt the behaviors, policies, and practices to make that value meaningful in everyday work. And without that lens, talented employees may quietly disengage, they might leave, despite the company believing it's being supportive with their really strong parental policies. So by combining the empathy, the values, and the culture in this way, the intersectional coach can help embed belonging into the very fabric of the organization. And this is where I believe the intersectional advantage can become a very practical blueprint for creating an authentic, inclusive, and sustainable culture. Oh.
Hello, thank you very much. Just scribbling whilst you were talking. There's so much to digest there. Thank you. I think for me there is a level of complexity that I'd love to get my head around. So why don't how would you, if you were talking to me who sees a level of complexity, and we'll bring everybody else back in 1 second, how would you break it down to help me understand how I could bring this into my organization?
Do you mean by understanding the complexities of people?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, go on. That in itself is so complex, right? But
yeah.
What we have to take people as they are, as individuals, rather than putting them into boxes, and understand that there are so many different elements that come into place or shape that unique experience. We've talked about this before, when companies might have an initiative that's solely focused on women. And then when you look at that initiative layered over into your engagement survey data or your exit survey data, you might see that your women are really engaged, and that's great. But then when you look at maybe your Black female population, they're really disengaged. And then you look at your Black population and actually they're really engaged. So understanding the two layers of the complexities coming together really gives a unique insight. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there's an easy answer to it for companies, but it's really being mindful of the intersectionalities to understand that there are complex and unique challenges that people will face. And only by starting to understand and look at diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging from that intersectional perspective can we take a step further in understanding their unique experiences.
Thank you so much. Is it possible to bring back Priya and Raj Kumari as well, please? Do you have anything to add to that question before I ask another one?
That's a good question. I think it's absolutely, I think so much about navigating through complexity is about curiosity, right? Which we've all been very consistent with in terms of, understand, like ask the questions, listen to the answers so that you can actually get to a point where you have a solution or a way forward with a relationship or with an organizational direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I like it. You're so right, Priya. It's curiosity mixed with that empathy. And also respect, because the more that we have the differences coming up, actually, yeah, let's navigate it with empathy, but let's do it in a way that's respectful to each other as well.
Yeah. To add to Priya's alliteration, acknowledgement and attunement.
Yeah. Here for an alliteration. Love them.
Me too. I've got so many questions that I've been scribbling. I don't entirely know where to begin. I feel like this is I don't want to ask this one, but I do, just in the sense for those people that might be struggling with it right now. So in today's politically charged world, where depending where you are, it's more charged than other places. How can you, as somebody who wants to work on this, try to create better cultures, essentially, but with belonging and inclusion might have such an association with them? How do you bring this to the table to your leadership without it being dismissed?
I think, as I mentioned, in terms of really understanding why we're doing what we're doing, I think that we cannot ignore what's happening right now. And we're here in Canada, which is very close to some of the changes that are happening in the US. We're very impacted by it. And the struggle in terms of how organizations navigate and leaders navigate is real, right? We do not want to diminish that there are organizations that are trying to navigate staying a little under the radar because they don't want to be attacked. And what they're trying to drive is stability. Right. So from an employee perspective, employees need to understand why they're making the decisions to drive that conversation around, how do we create stability? How do we create security? Right. And things that are important to them. And they don't necessarily understand the why in a way that a lot of people are feeling left behind. But I think where we're going to see, like, unfortunately, hindsight is going to be 2020, because the decisions you make now and the conversations you ignore now are like the next generation is watching, and they have very, very different expectations. So we will see this play out in terms of reputation, in terms of recruitment and retention. I do like too many alliterations. I'm sorry about that, but it's like we will see it play out. And the question for me is making sure you know where you're going, who you are as an organization, so that you can actually make the right decisions and have honest conversations. You're not having them out in the open, but you should be having them with your teams and your people, and listening and answering questions.
I will add that according to the World Health Organization and the CDC, loneliness is an epidemic and it's rampant across the globe. How we solve for loneliness is belonging. And so my heart is breaking witnessing what is happening in organizations that people are choosing because of the political climate globally, choosing productivity and performance over belonging and people. They just are. And I'm also seeing pockets across the globe emerge around islands of coherence and the willingness to double down on meta relationality, for example, is actually a website. I was like, that is amazing. So there are pockets that are doubling down on people, and we need to find those pockets for our own salvation, for those of us who are doing the emotional labor and really kind of pivoting the language, pivoting the strategy to really hold as much as we can the cultures of engagement. Nilufar Khonsari actually has written an amazing book called The Future is Collective. I mean, I think that's where we're headed, is cultures of care. With the rise of global fascism, I think we have an opportunity to figure out what humanity means to all of us as a collective.
I'd like to just jump on something you said then. I was thinking about I think it's being clever, and words matter, and as soon as certain things happen, we and some of our award winners around the world were letting us know that certain terms are being now tracked by government bots in different parts of the world, and they could be defunded, and so we had to think about our own language as well. So going to the doubling down more on the belonging side of things rather than other terminology, just to be clever. But I wonder whether the conflict to connection route, and actually where all three of you have mentioned this and around empathy and leadership, and actually going towards, look, there is conflict in the world, there's conflict within our own ecosystem of the workplace right now, how we can go from conflict to connection, work to a bigger sense of purpose and values, and that be the road into this belonging and creating these safe environments, and actually hitting it head on and tote from the other side of the spectrum, so to speak. I wonder if that might be what we need to do.
Not only is that 100% yes, we are faced with another wave of challenge, which is AI and sycophancy. People are so damn lonely that of course they're going to pivot to sycophancy. I want to be flattered. I want to be praised. According to Gary Chapman, in the US, 70% of workforces have never experienced praise. What? So, why?
Wow.
Why?
That makes me sad.
Right?
Yeah.
We need to start somewhere. Yeah, please.
That just makes me sad. To hear that, to hear it in that stat makes it so real. And what I wanted to say before, when we're talking, the geopolitical world that we live in, whether it's in the UK, whether it's the US, wherever we might be, something is going on that's affecting each of us on a human level. We are human beings, right? And we will be impacted by something or another, and it will be in a different way. And I think sometimes this is what gets forgotten, is that at the end of the day, we are people. And at the end of the day, when you employ people, your people need to know what support they have, whatever's happening. What access do they have to support? What access do they have to their employee assistance program? What access do they have to people that they can talk to internally? And that makes such a big difference, to just remind them that this is, in these moments of difficult times, this is what you can do and how we can help you.
Is it Alia?
Alia,
thank you. We have billboards in Silicon Valley that are now saying, "Don't hire humans."
Yeah,
wow.
We have them here.
So I don't know what to do with that. I'm at a loss. I would love some support on that, because if that's where we are, certain lenses or certain perspectives.
Yeah. And I think this is an opportunity, right? I think that who we are during chaos and conflict defines who we are. It's not during the good times, right? That we show up in a real and authentic way. And I think about the fact that, You know, maybe like there's a lot of conversations around DEI initiatives, you know, you're not supposed to use these words and stuff, but in some cases, like Alia was saying, that we created these boxes and we created these sentiments that weren't necessarily real and helping us. We were we were doing a lot of check the box, you know, programs that were more focused on campaigns versus real conversations and relationships. And I think that there's this opportunity with organizations that when they look at this, it's not about taking a look at what they were doing superficially, but then taking a real look at like, you know, practices and their policies and the, you know, all of the how they work together.
Absolutely.
And that's the piece that's going to drive the change, because people, what is it, Maya Angelou, I love her quote, is people don't forget what you said, but they don't ever forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
That's where we need to be thinking, that we can do the right thing without campaigning about it.
Well, so I love that so much, because, and that's where, you know, I want to be like, and we need the right hemisphere, because that's where we feel.
Yeah.
Just because I'm conscious of time as well, and I just want to have another hour talking about this, I think. I've always said that society, what the workplace is trying to cure society, and they have the poor people who are running these teams and running these companies have to deal with society's woes, and they've got the biggest challenges ahead of them. And I'm almost coming back to the very first thing that was mentioned in this hour by Priya, where belonging does not require agreement. And over the past however many years, it's become very binary. You're right, you're wrong. My opinion's the right one, yours is the wrong one. And I just thought saying that out loud, belonging does not require agreement, that I feel like should be a default scenario for every single workplace and every leader in every workplace right now. And that belonging might come with some discomfort because people aren't used to disagreement. It's just right or wrong. And I wondered, leaving it on that note, what one piece of advice, having listened to each other and the conversation we just had right now, what one piece of advice would you do or give to the people listening right now around going out there and trying to create a culture of belonging, or whatever you might want to offer to the world? And we'll do in reverse order. So we'll go Alia first.
Take people on an individual basis.
Fantastic.
The most important leadership skill to have is the ability to sit in discomfort.
Yeah. And I'd say the same thing, Rajkumari, that we think about our comfort zone, but the comfort zone is where we stay exactly the same. We think, you know, I think at the end of it, there's the distress zone, which is danger, right? We're worried about our safety or security. But in the middle is that discomfort you talked about, Matt. And the discomfort is where we grow. Yeah. The discomfort is where we develop. Discomfort is where we see innovation. Right? So let's lean into the discomfort and not see it as a bad thing. Let's actually see it as an opportunity for our own growth and the growth of our organizations.
Fantastic. I think that's a wonderful place to finish. And all I have to say is thank you very much. And I don't care if past storytellers listen to this. This is by far and away our best power hour we've had since starting them 18 months ago. We've set a very high bar today, so I really, really do appreciate it. So thank you very much. And yeah, hope you have a brilliant rest of the day. And I will personally be in contact to say thank you. So thank you.
Thank you for inspiring me today, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Wow. Well, thank you very much to everybody. Absolutely mind blown. I've been reading a lot of books on the brain, so I haven't been reading enough clearly with the right and left hemisphere. So I'm going to be going and buying a load of books that were mentioned throughout this conversation right now. But thank you to our three storytellers, all absolutely fantastic, and bringing some very sage advice that we need to actually create some discomfort, I think, to help move things on and grow our organizations into better people first places. So it's not going to be easy, but I think we need to have those conversations. Anyway, thank you so much for joining in. If you're watching live or on demand, And thank you again to our amazing 3 storytellers, and thanks to my colleague Amy for bringing it all together. Take care for now. Bye-bye.